Grenadines, Suriname, and Trinidad and Tobago. The NSBs in these countries are systematically built
for some additional road repairs. The total amount, if I remember correctly, was about 2.1 billion, and it was divided up between the Ministry of Local Government, the Ministry of Work, Job Creation, which are the NWA, and the Ministry of Agriculture. The Ministry of Local Government had about 150 million of the program. They have sent in their report. I took the liberty, members, today Minister Mackenzie, speaking in the House, the Permanent Secretary, indicated she was finalizing for his presentation today. So on your behalf, I indicated that we would look at the program. I think if members review it, if there was no problem, we'd let it go. If you find some concern or the other, we can indicate to the Ministry of Local Government, but I gave them permission not to attend today so that they could continue with the preparation for the minister's presentation. And so there are some housekeeping matters, the first of which is some outstanding minutes, the minutes of January 24th and 31st, and the minutes of March 14th. I'd just like to indicate these were circulated some time ago, and I'd just like, if members, if we can take it in block, if there are any corrections to the minutes. If no one has any corrections, could I have somebody move for the confirmation? So moved, seconded by Member Campbell. Yes. We have some apologies today. Members Spencer, Williams, Holness, Jackson, and Stewart. With that in place, members, we can move to the matter at hand. We have with us representatives from the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Job Creation, and of course the NWA and RADA are also present. I think let us start with the Ministry of Agriculture. And I was looking at the report, and I just want to say it was an interesting read. I would ask the Permanent Secretary to say more on it, but the information here indicates that it took yes, I was looking at it that there were 63 roads targeted under the program, and that 46 had been completed. Is this year? Yes, 46 had been completed. And it seems to me that during this 3-month period that there has been quite a bit of activity and a lot of the work has been completed. So I would turn you over, Mr. Sandberry and Rada, just to give us an idea of the program, the selection process, what is coming, and so we can just look at the last program, what's coming for the next program. And if there are any concerns, remember, I would turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. As you will recall, in the original 17-18 estimates, the ministry was allocated a sum of 150 million to undertake a farm road rehabilitation program. With that 150 million, we rehabilitated 24 roads. The report as of May 15th is that 22 of those 24 roads have in fact been completed, and 2 roads are at different stages of completion in Clarendon and Manchester, and they were in fact hampered due to rains. And the report is there with the details of each road, etc. Towards the end of the financial year, we were allocated another sum in the supplementary. And from that amount, we set out to do another 39 farm roads. Because we have been doing assessments of road and BQs, etc., almost on a continuous basis, we were able to quickly absorb that money and go to the market and have the roads done. The then minister came to this house and announced the allocation and laid something on the table, which roads will be done, so that the MPs were fully aware. Again, as of the 15th of May, with that allocation in the supplementary budget, we have in fact started all 39 roads, 33 of which are now completed and 6 at various stages of completion. Details in terms of selection process, etc., I will refer to Rada.
Morning, Chairman, House. The selection process, Chairman, is that the RADA team on the ground, they do an assessment. We have what is called a format how we select the roads based on the number of farmers, based on the production of the area, and based on productivity and potential for agricultural development in any particular area. So with that in mind, we wrote to the parish managers for the various parishes for them to make submissions. When those roads are submitted, then we go through a process of prioritization based on, the critical nature of the roads. And then now we would have put them together. We inform the various members of parliaments or the political representatives, and we tell them that, look, this is the road, and these are the criteria that we have used to select the roads, any objection or whatever. And then we start the BQs, and then once they are approved, we normally have the minister and the PSV circulate the list, and once that is approved, then we start the BQs.
Just to clarify, this is a central government program, and so, and certainly from my perspective, I've had very good consultation, but this is one of those programs that's in consultation with the members of parliament, as you indicated.
Yes.
Yeah, and members of parliament, I think that we've had it has been one of those with consultation. And if there are issues with a road, of course, there's a discussion with the members of parliament, and really just seek to get consensus.
Yes.
On how you get those roads. All right, I don't think that we have had much problems with that. And the roads that were started that have not been completed, you go in and mop up.
Yes, that's what we are doing now, and many of those roads were really hampered by adverse weather conditions in the area.
Okay. Members, do you have any? Sure.
Inquire, because I recall seeing, and this is to Errata Rep, a piece of roadway described in Northeast St. Catherine as Cocoa Walk. No reference was made to the Member of Parliament insofar as I know, and then nothing has happened.
No, that road was Mr. Warmington Road. It was completed, and he's aware of it.
No, I'm saying the description I saw was Cocoa Walk, there is Cocoa Walk in Northeast St. Catherine, and it said Northeast St. Catherine. So I don't know how you move from Cocoa Walk, Northeast St. Catherine, to someplace else. I'm not sure. That is...
Okay. Well...
Additionally, I see on your proposed list here, you have Sunnyside, Northeast St. Catherine. Could you assist me as to where that is?
It's in the Vanity Fair area of Linstead, going towards...
Yes, but that would not be Northeast St. Catherine, so somebody has a misdescription there.
Okay. So we can probably...
Yes, so when you start making the allocations,
correct, yeah.
You would have consulted with not the Member of Parliament of Northeast St. Catherine. You haven't done it in relation to Cocoa Walk. You haven't done it in relation to this place you describe as Sunnyside. So, because I don't know Sunnyside to exist in Northeast St. Catherine.
Okay.
So when the figures come through to a committee like this, it gives the wrong impression that there's been an allocation to Northeast St. Catherine when, in fact, there hasn't been any.
Okay. Well, this will be corrected. Thank you.
But that's precisely why, Chairman, that's precisely why the former minister took it to Parliament and laid it here, because communities in different parishes have the same name and so on and so forth, so that we could have maximum transparency, and so that if there are errors, members of Parliament could point out and the necessary correction made. So the point we're making in terms of the proposed list, nothing has gone into the ground as yet. So if there are errors, then there's an opportunity to correct the same.
At this point, because I see my friend has just brought it to my attention on the proposed list that there is a matter for Cocoa Walk, which is the one which you just indicated is complete. And it's on the proposed list. So
one of those Cocoa Walks have to move for a name change.
Yeah, but he wouldn't be doing Cocoa Walk again.
All right, well, members, I think that there's this is obviously an error of sorts.
It's an error. The list is tabled.
That can be resolved, I think.
The list is tabled here.
Yeah.
And we invite any feedback from members of Parliament.
Absolutely. Hence, sorry, member, but hence the discussion I had before. Yesterday, I did have a word with the minister, and he indicated that it was the intention that any members of Parliament that had a difficulty with any of these, there was room for consultation. So I think once we know that once we can keep it open and transparent, we shouldn't have a problem. Yes.
And just a question for Manchester, Alvey and St. Tulis. You have it on what you have on the new list is a continuation of what you started. All right, so the St. Tulis needs to be changed from central Manchester to south on the new list. And I think Canoe Valley is also in south Manchester where you have it on Northeast on the new list.
All right. Yes, Member Ross.
Just a question, really. Propose this for Westmoreland. I just want to find out what kind of a collaboration like the agencies are having, because there's a community on this Goldsmith. There's a proposal for $7 million road. But currently there's also a program through the TF that was approved recently for that same road for $22 million. So I just want to find out if this is a continuation of that same road, or is it an overlap
Okay,
with regards
this
to...
road was proposed before TIF. The Minister Hutchinson, sent me a letter just yesterday that he wants to change this road because another agency is dealing with that road.
So this is going to be changing?
Yeah.
So this wouldn't mean that Central going to get one less road?
No, I think it's...
So I can go ahead and consult with my parish manager to add an additional road?
He recommended a road.
He recommended a road?
Yeah.
Who recommended the road?
The minister recommended a road?
Yeah.
Without, can the member of parliament...
Right. So I thought he would have probably...
No, he hasn't, and he doesn't normally do that anyway.
Okay.
But I was wondering, can I have any input in the recommendation of the roads that would be most...
No, Member Ross.
Not here, you know. Not at this committee, of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
But, well, I'll follow it up from that angle.
Okay.
Yes, as I said, one of the things that when we started this discussion, I thought I actually commended the fact that we have had good consultation. I spoke to Minister Minister Shaw yesterday. He had indicated that where any members of Parliament have a difficulty with the list, they bring it in because they are farm roads and it is really for us to look and just indicate that where it is that, you know, a suggestion is made without consultation with the MPs sort of breaches the spirit of what we're doing with this program. Everyone in this house is here to look out for their constituents, their elected representatives, and there's a relationship that comes with that. I just want to clarify something. It may not be so, but you indicated Tourism Enhancement Fund is doing a road on Goldsmith Drive. But I do not recall receiving from the Tourism Enhancement Fund a list of any roads that are being done, and certainly in my constituency I don't have. I don't know if members have. I did not know that Tourism Enhancement Fund was doing a road program.
But that's what I was just going to ask, Chair, because if RADA has this on their list as a farm road per se, how is it that TF would be spending money unless it's going to a road to an attraction? Like that?
I'm not aware of any attractions in that particular year.
And was there any consultation about this road?
No.
You know, one of the reasons why, as a parliament, we do this exercise is to allow for the coordination so that you don't get the same roads and the same programs. So, Clerk, I think on behalf of the members here, all of us would like to know if there are any roads being done by the Tourism Enhancement Fund. We all have some roads, especially those to attractions, which are their primary mandate. Could we invite them next week, just with regard to their road program? We don't need but we need to know the road program with specific regard to this road and what program it forms a part of. And then if members have a wider difficulty, because we all have attractions and different things in our, and certainly in my time, we had a very extensive program to the different attractions, but to the best of my knowledge, that program had discontinued. So could we specifically ask them, invite them to next week with regards to this program alone? I have been advised wisely by the clerk, but unless you all want to spend Labor Day in Parliament, we should defer it till the week after. All right, so and you get widespread, unanimous agreement. So we'll do it for the week after. Members, you
just on this the list that was the new list that was presented to us. How will this work be phased? Is it going to be phased in, or is there a time frame for this to be completed? How will this be approached?
I think we will do it in phases, in batches. And normally, the funds will not come as one big chunk. So what we will do is do the necessary proprietary work, BQs, tender, and everything, so that as soon as the funds are available, we start the process.
Can you give us an idea of when you expect to really start?
Well, we are doing the proprietary work now on BQs. Once the House approve the list, and we are ready to go. We're just waiting on the funds, so we kickstart. This entire list is for the 2018-2019 financial year.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Oh, this is a list for the budget year.
Yeah, for the financial year.
All right. Well, so members, I think what we can take out of this, where there are some concerns, and we can pass it on to our colleagues, the members of Parliament can have a discussion with the RADA for consultation. I actually have one road that I would like to have a discussion with, but it's something that there's time for it. Members, I don't know if there's anything else for the Ministry of Agriculture. All right, so we can move on now to the NWA. No, I don't. What is it? Well, you want? Yes, I suspect they can. Huh? Yeah. We just deal with NWA quickly. Members, before we move on, I just want to welcome students and teachers from the Belfield Primary School who are with us today, watching the proceedings of Belfield Primary School. So we'd like to welcome them and hope they have an informative session. All right, so we move on now to the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation. All right, so members, again, the bulk of the program, of the 2.1 billion, you got a total of just about 1.475. Oh, so it was a greater program. And then afterwards there was a patching program. All right, so you want to
Thank you, Chairman. Morning, members as well. And I know that you're very kind and courteous to Mr. Stanberry. I hope similar courtesies.
We're kind of courteous to everybody.
I hope similar courtesies will be extended
Absolutely.
in our direction.
Absolutely.
Okay, as indicated, Chairman, the totality of our spend under this particular program is about $1.5 billion, although the provision from the supplementary estimate was 1.3. We saw the need to expand the program in response to many requests that we had. So we had some reserve funds that were in alignment with what we are doing under the 1.3. As it now stands, Chairman, members, of the total amount of money that we had at our disposal, some 167 roads were selected for attention, and the list outlining these roads that list was previously submitted to the committee. So that now is public knowledge. The average contract price for each intervention is about $8 million. And the importance of the average contract price is that as per the requirements of the government's procurement apparatus, we're obliged to go to tender for these. And so for the majority of these works, we utilize the limited tender methodology. And as most, if not all of you would have been aware, in undertaking the tendering exercise, we did solicit from respective members of parliament, and we did in fact receive assistance from each MP vis-a-vis that process. So that worked very well. And as it now stands, we have contracted 92% of the value of the program. So that's the good news. The not so encouraging news is the extent to which the various contractors in the various areas have performed on the program. As it now stands, our numbers are showing that we are at 35% progress, meaning that of all the work that have been done, we have processed and paid in that amount. So quick arithmetic would suggest that there's another 65% in terms of progress deficit. And that could of itself sound like a bad number, but how it works in reality is that we don't recognize the progress until the work is completed, 100% complete, and payment made. So it is eminently possible that a lot of the projects on the ground would have been significantly advanced, but we don't recognize them as so we don't report on fractional completion for programs of this nature, because as I said before, the average price is $8 million. So if they've done $6 million, we still would not bring that to book just yet. So what is eminently possible is that within another week or two, as projects which are close to completion do in fact get to completion, this number will bump up. I should, however, alert the members of the committee to a systemic problem in the contracting fraternity, where we experience significant difficulties, particularly with the smaller contractors, them having been nominated, them having completed their tender, them having been offered an award of a contract. There were significant difficulties with a large number of the smaller contractors for them to meet the minimum government requirement of public liability insurance for these jobs. And that is a big problem in the industry. Might I also say that even for the bigger projects, a lot of the contractors who are required to produce insurance and bonds, once they've done one job or two jobs and they've pledged their house and pledged their children's house, they get to their limit very quickly. So that is a major issue for the industry, and that is something that we need to look at in a holistic way. We're thinking of, having dialogue with maybe the insurance companies to see if, one can get into pool insurance and so on and so forth. But that is an issue that is facing right now. There are not very many local contractors who, you can comfortably award contracts of values close to $1 billion Jamaican dollars with an expectation that, they will be able to meet the prerequisites. So that is something that, we're giving thought to, and obviously any assistance that we can get in that regard is something that would be useful to our purpose. But for this exercise, notwithstanding the 35% book completion, I think that by the end of May, very early June, we should be significantly on our way to wrapping up this program.
Okay. The members, are there any questions? I have member Dunn first. And
I must say I'm pleased with the level of attention and NAA is paying to the road network in Jamaica. I'm very happy about that. One of the questions I want to ask Mr. Hunter is that these small contractors, they have been contractors that has participated in NAA's activities before, correct? So these are contractors that you think are capable of doing the work to the limit of what they've been asked to do?
Very good question, because it speaks to performance of a contractor, particularly past performance, and how does past performance influence choice of contractors going forward. Now, as you know, the government contracting apparatus is presided over by the NCC. So it is the NCC that registers contractors and places them in particular categories. And as long as a contractor is registered and he's in a particular category and he's tax compliant, there is currently no statutory prohibition for using him. And that does pose a problem because unless in the evaluation criteria for a particular bid, there is an express criterion regarding past performance, then once you go to tender, you have to treat with all the contractors who respond. I know that is getting attention in other quarters, but suffice it to say that from our experience, obviously the proficiency of different contractors will vary. It will vary based on the complexity of the job. It will vary based on how faithful we are in terms of paying him on time, local issues, and so on and so forth. But on the whole, we don't have any major concerns regarding the proficiency of the contractor. Where there's an issue would be capacity as opposed to proficiency. And capacity will be acceptable up to a certain point. But then if the contractor starts getting a lot of work and he does not make the internal adjustments to beef up his capacity, his managerial competence and so on, then you're going to get declining returns in that regard.
Can I just continue? Why I ask that is because if the public liability insurance is the major issue and the proficiency is not the issue, and we want to encourage small contractors to grow and become large contractors. Since this is a major issue for the small contractors, is there any way that NAA could negotiate, so to speak, with the insurance companies for a broad insurance public liability policy that some of these small contractors could tap in, because you already, it's almost guaranteed that they will do a good job at what they do, and therefore they could tap into this and erase this issue of public liability insurance?
Good thought process, but generally the devil is in the detail, and it brings to bear the role and function of government versus role and function of the private sector. These small contractors, do we have sympathy for their prosperity and their well-being? They are still private sector players, and one would think that private sector is more efficient than we in government. So my personal view would be that I would leave that for enterprising entrepreneurs to corral that and make something of it. It's not something I would think that government would want to get its tentacles in.
No, just to say it.
It's just a follow-up to his...
Yeah, all right, let me...
Right. In your response, you speak to the issue of contractors getting quite a number of jobs and not able to increase their capacity to deal with that. In the case that occurs, how do you treat with it?
Okay, the government's contracting apparatus has a prescribed limit for contract award. I think it's, I don't remember the figure, but 3 times a particular figure. So there is an upper limit. Now, what it is, again, there are different schools of thought regarding, capacity limits. One theory of the firm is, contractor will say, unless I get a lot of contract, I can't employ a lot of people, because you don't employ the people and have the staff sit, you don't have the staff sitting around and then you go shopping for a job. So one theory of the firm is that as companies get more contracts, they will employ more people. We sometimes do it the other way, where we say, well, go employ a lot of staff and then go search for a contract. But from a business point of view, that's, nobody really does that. So I personally don't have an issue with a contractor reaching out to get a multiplicity of contracts. What I would expect is that that contractor will grow the capacity of his firm in tandem with the work that he has gotten. And so whether by mergers, partnerships, joint ventures, or whatever, that is the way that our small contractors can grow and ought to grow, because it has been observed that Jamaican contractors have no footprint outside Jamaica, or very little, if any. And that's largely because, the capacity has not been expanded sufficiently. And I do know that that is something that the master builders are looking at. It's a subject. There are very many theories as to why they haven't grown, but that's for another time. But just to answer your question, Member Witter, I said before, if a contractor gets a job, I would expect that the sensible thing to do would be for him to grow the capacity of his internal capabilities to be able to absorb this bigger portfolio.
That still doesn't answer the question, because my question is, what if he doesn't? How do you treat with
again, if he doesn't, the contracting apparatus is very prescriptive. Once a contractor wins a contract and is offered the award, there are some conditions precedent to first for what we call the commencement order to be given. So he would be written to say, dear Mr. Witter, you have won this contract. The value of the contract is X, and you are required to produce your insurance and bonds by a certain time. If he and that's prescribed. If he doesn't come in with his papers by that time, then the award would be withdrawn, annulled, and you would go to the next person. So that's what the contracting apparatus prescribes. And we have to abide by that.
What if he starts the project and is unable to complete?
Again, the contracting protocol is very prescriptive. If a contractor starts a project and does not make good progress, the contracting authority is obliged to write to him to say you are not keeping to the schedule that you have indicated, and in accordance with clause 57-35, we will levy liquidated damages on you. And if he doesn't step up his performance, liquidated damage is levied, and then it gets to a point where the owner of the contract can then terminate the contract. And so the contract would be terminated, the contractor would be paid for the part that he has performed, and the remainder of the works would be issued to another contractor.
Can I go? Mr. Hunter, how are you doing? For those contracts, and I'm sorry that we couldn't get a better reading of the percentage of work done on some of these. And I understand your methodology. But for those contractors who have not yet started, and you had mentioned one about the liability insurance, have all the contractors now that have been awarded submitted that liability insurance?
No, and
right. So let me before you go, let me just finish up. And if not, which will now delay, you had a delay because also of the availability of the asphalt at some point. But if after months have passed and they have not yet, then what? Because you can't wait in perpetuity for this.
Okay. Interestingly, the $1 billion patching program, which came after the 1.3 program, I concede that the level of work, the complexity is greater in the 1.3 program than in the other one. However, we are some 85% complete in the other program, that having started months after the previous one, and almost the same expenditure. Factors contributing to the greater speed on the latter program, well, one, the complexity of the work, as I said before, but we did a significant amount of the latter program by force accounting in-house. And so operationally, it is our decision that if it turns out that a particular contractor is not going to be able to take up the offer in good time, then we have some options, one of which is for us to...
At what point is there a cutoff point? Because
yes,
the thing is, you're going to have another program rolling over even before this one may even be completed.
That cutoff, okay, we had set end of June to be our closeout for the entire program. The average time for these projects is about 3 months? 2 to 3 months, so that's 6 to 8 weeks. So what it is, operationally, we have said, listen, if we don't have closeout in terms of the contracting by end of this week, then we would move towards force account.
But in the case of, and I'm looking through the list here, and that's why I call my colleague, Mr. Campbell, Northeast St. Catherine, where the budgeted amount was $57 million, but the contractor came in at $30 million. In that case, that's a $20 million difference.
Which one is that?
Northeast St. Catherine, look under St. Catherine, Northeast, Mr. Leslie Roy Campbell.
I want to make sure that we capture Mr. Campbell faithfully. What's there?
Second page.
This is on the report you gave us this morning. Look on the second page. in the St. Catherine.
Oh, okay. That's not a single job, you know. Those are totals. There are in fact 3 jobs. No, and one of them is still outstanding. No, we can't see. As I said before,
Meaning it has not gone to tenders yet.
yeah. Okay, so 2 of the 3 have been awarded.
Okay.
And as I said before, and we apologize for how the information is presented, because those have not been completed, you do not know the state, you know,
that's fine.
for that. For the one, Mr. Campbell, that is not yet awarded, the return from the contractors was significantly in excess of our estimate, but we thought the job could be done for. And so the procedure in such circumstance is to call him in and to have a negotiation to see if we can get him closer to the budgeted amount.
Yeah.
So,
Well, this would raise a red flag just because of how it was reported.
yes,
so,
I concede that.
All right. So you're saying, because I'm even looking at even Manchester, for Central Manchester, for Peter Bunting, which is the Ward Avenue, and I know that has not yet been started up till Sunday when I was there. So that's why I'm asking about that cutoff period, because if these, I always say that when jobs like these are delayed, the cost itself, and especially with the cost of oil going up to, which is a great deal of input into making asphalt, then the cost of the job also increases.
Yeah. In fact, as that one for Member Bunting, it has been awarded. Again, not to sound like a recording, the various steps in the process.
No, I understand that, you know.
Contract
but
has
I'm
been
just
awarded
saying
for
that
it to
there has
mobilize.
to be a cutoff point
Yes.
for you to then go to either the second or you do it force account or something.
Or something.
Because
Absolutely.
so the longer you wait, it's the more expensive that the job itself gets also.
Right. And I am not going to claim that we are timid in jettisoning a contractor, considering that, you know, we did come to that contractor after extensive dialogue with a local representative. But yes, that is something that we will do if the cutoff point is reached.
Okay.
Just for clarity, there are 3 concurrent programs. One is the Mid-B, which is a sort of bigger projects that takes place. Right. The second one is this, which is the rehab
1.3,
and drainage. And then the third is a patching program.
Patching, right.
And there are 3 separate things dealing with different issues.
Right.
The Mid-P obviously is a program. It goes out. It has a year or 2 of planning. So we have seen those roads coming in over a period of time. The patching is a fairly frequent program. You know, whenever there's something, and sometimes it's done through MPs with a small amount to select some roads. Sometimes just basically through the
main road. Yeah.
Yeah, through and with the superintendent, NWA offices and so forth, and other times the bigger programs like the one we had recently. And then there's this program. One of the things that I just want to clarify, just as I said, just looking at this program, on this one that's in front of me for road rehab, I noticed there are no roads here for West and Westmoreland. I suspect there may be more, but the one I have here. Now, I do have some things on Mid-P, as do others, and I do have some things on patching.
I take it that Western Westmoreland would be the constituency of the chairman?
Yes.
I'm not too familiar with the constituencies.
Yes, because I would really like to visit as often as possible.
Right. Okay, so the master list that I have here lists Tonehead to Blackness.
Right, no. So the question I'm asking you, that's
and,
which program?
Jerusalem Mountain to Glasgow.
So, no, that's which program?
Yeah.
That's the patching?
That's a 1.3. And Torrington to Pennycook, which my notes tell me is shared between two MPs. So those three are on.
No. I was asking you a specific question, Mr. Green. There are 3 programs.
Right.
Mid-P,
Right.
patching,
And the 1.3.
and road rehabilitation and drainage.
Right.
I was saying that you read out to me.
That's for
Is
the
it-
1.3, road rehabilitation and drainage. For these 3, yeah.
So I don't have that. I don't have that document.
You don't have the detail. But I have the detail. Yeah.
No, not only do I not have the details, I don't know where you're.
Yeah.
Which one is that? Huh? So which paper is that? So which paper is that on? What? Yeah, I'm not certain what you're reading from. So you're opening a new.
But I assure you.
No, I know of those. That's why I was just trying to get clarity. Which program?
Seems to be an error on that what you have, but this is the master. This is the master list, so it's just a matter of correcting the paper. But I assure you that those 3
Okay,
are on
all right.
Yeah,
No,
so that's been done.
So, and those are road rehab.
Those are road rehab.
Beautiful. Well, that's what I was saying. I wasn't certain.
Yeah, it's certain,
Because
for
there's
sure.
a patching program, a mid-P, and a
Absolutely.
road rehab. And what we want to do is ensure that they, all right. So,
There's no
well, what you can probably do is just, outside of this, just send the corrected, so at least we know.
Will do.
Fine, no problem.
Not with the list, though. Just.
I can give you some latitude with
Please.
that.
Since I'm here.
Yes, since you're here. And we, one has to do with just a general mitigation program, seeing that the hurricane season is soon upon us. The level of flooding that we have been seeing in last year, started out early last year, unprecedented in some areas that we would not normally see. That the level of floodings that we're seeing. The amount of expenditure in the last financial year to do some remedial and mitigation work in those same areas was not what was expected. We have an aging infrastructure, and we saw what happened in Montego Bay. We tried to get some information out of the state minister yesterday in the House. He was somewhat reluctant, so since we have you here now, it would be good to see if we can get more out of you than we did of him. Is there going to be a comprehensive, I say comprehensive because it cannot be like what we got last year or the year before, mitigation program going into the hurricane season? And are there any plans for improvement of infrastructure, especially, and I come back to the Montego Bay, because I myself and the chairman did a tour of Montego Bay, and there was quite a bit of infrastructure damage that was done. And has there been any spend in the Montego Bay area? And the first question on mitigation.
Okay, let me answer it this way. Having been in government for as long as I have, I'm painfully aware of the difference in the prerogatives of the person like myself and the prerogatives of the political directorate. So let me say that I can intimate that there will be a mitigation program we had discussions with the Honorable Prime Minister himself yesterday in his room, and he has given us certain instructions vis-a-vis a mitigation program that should commence shortly. So we are, in fact, we have just started putting the details of that program together, and I'm sure that at the appropriate time, me having intimated at the appropriate time, either the Prime Minister as our minister or Minister Warmington as the State Minister will announce. So I can only intimate they will announce. But from what I know, I'm confident that that will happen very, very soon.
The second question on...
Second question, infrastructure improvement in Montego Bay. As you would have garnered from your tour, significant improvement to infrastructure is required.
And that's island-wide, that's not just Montego Bay.
Right, not just Montego Bay.
Yeah.
Dr. Chang had asked us to prepare designs and estimates for remedial works to the North Gully. That was done. The financing, obviously, is the next step in the process. I got a copy of the report on the flooding in Montego Bay, and as you would have known, there were some contributory factors in terms of spatial development and so on and so forth, which impacted on it, and those will have to be addressed. But specific to the undertakings of the NWA, we are looking at the improvement in the North Gully. We are looking at, we are now doing some contributory works on some roads, because the whole question of disaster mitigation is complex. A significant part of it is how one needs to build a more robust infrastructure so that when the weather events occur, the infrastructure can withstand. That's a tall order, not just for Jamaica, but for every country on earth, because existing infrastructure is existing infrastructure, and we're now talking about increasing capacity of existing drains, which is not something that happens by rote. I mean, you literally have to go and take up what is there and put down something else. So it takes some time. We had a master drainage study done for Jamaica, funded by the IDB. We got that in hand about 5 years ago, and we are implementing that incrementally, meaning that we were doing a big project as Mandela, Constant Spring, and all these projects. The prescription of the master drainage study in respect of those areas, those are being included in the construction as we go along. So that's one strategy, that where we have a funded program and we're actually doing work, we incorporate the prescription of the master drainage study into it. There are obviously other areas where the master drainage study had a prescribed solution that we are not yet doing any projects there, so that is still in abeyance. But yes, we're doing Montego Bay is on our radar.
And let me say why I'm zoning in on that, on the mitigation, because let's use the Clarendon area for an example, and the flooding that we saw, especially in the toll gate area and parts of southwest, and we saw where bridges were damaged and still not yet replaced as yet. And I want to ask,
work going on though.
Yeah, and I'm going to ask some questions on those, but I would have expected, and the capacity of some of those earth drains, that I would have seen some level of cleaning along that stretch, coming from probably the where we come off the toll, coming straight down back to Clarendon Park. But we only saw some sections, yeah? And because we are expecting the rain, we don't know when it will come. But then if we don't do something to mitigate, then we're going to have the flooding again. Yeah?
And
so my thing is how it is that we, in some instance, prioritize. Even when we went into Montego Bay and went up, up into the hills, because the flooding itself was not just in the town itself, but up in the hills, and you saw the debris coming down from these, where the concrete stops for some of these gullies, and then the debris fill up the gully, so the water only takes a road. So in instances like that where we know that these are the danger areas and we have not yet prepared, how much are we preparing for the next time around? Yeah, and I know we always say that the budget and we're waiting on, but at some point we have to prioritize this, because then it may not just be houses being flooded out, but the loss of lives.
Member Phillips, you have very fertile ground here in terms of recognizing the present danger of weather events and the impact it has on society. But equally, we have to understand that it's a complex issue. A lot of it, the genesis of a lot of the flooding issues has to do with how we use land. I mean, as the impervious cover increases by roofs and pavements or whatever, runoff increases. So whereas water would soak into the ground, if it's normal soil, with an impervious cover being expanded, there's runoff. Now, unless the drains were originally designed with that in mind, then the drains are going to get overwhelmed. That's the first thing. The second thing is that in terms of the frequency of storm events and the intensity of storm events, the design, I will tell you this as a former engineer, the design criteria that was used to design the drains which exist now, those design criteria are out the door. They're out the door. I mean, we're talking about 2 times and 3 times multiplication factor in terms of what would now be required. And it's not, as I said before, that's not an issue that only Jamaica faces. I mean, the entire infrastructure world faces this dilemma. How do you make this quantum leap in the improvement of your infrastructure to respond to the imperatives of climate change? It is something that we'll have to do incrementally. We have to also be very, very rigid in terms of land management, where we allow people to live. The truth is that the engineering solution for some of the drainage problem, I mean, the cost for it far exceed, the capacity of the beneficiary. Well, I'm just talking as an engineer. The capacity of the beneficiary people to sustain. You go and you live in the Rio Grande Valley. We can't engineer that and build that to sustain that. I mean, these are just common sense things. So governments as a whole have to be very rigid and very sensible in terms of development and where development happens, where people are allowed to live. Invariably, you'll find it is a much more elegant solution to relocate some habitation than to try and fortify it through an engineering solution. So that's one part of the story. The other part about the mitigation, yes, we'll do that. But you mentioned an earthen drain. I've often seen where in development people prescribe earthen drain. Why? The capital cost is low. But once you put in an earthen drain, you have the maintenance of that in perpetuity. Every 3 months you have to clean it because the grass is going to grow and it's going to get choked. So while we think we're saving money up front by putting in an earthen drain instead of a concrete drain, it just means that you're locking yourself into a maintenance regime in perpetuity. And that again poses problems. So yes, we are conscious. As you know, the NAA has national responsibility for flood control. So we don't discriminate. We take all possibilities to heart, and we certainly, as I said before, there will be a mitigation program within the next, I would think, based on advice, it would be within the next 4 weeks or so. We'll start with one to coincide with the start of the hurricane season, and then I think we'll ramp it up around about August, September.
Let me just last question. Finally, the current major projects that's taking place now, the Barbican, Constant Spring Road, and Hagley Park, 3 miles as it is there now. One deficiency that I recognize and the traveling public is traffic management at these projects. I am sure that it is built in the contract with the main contractor, China Harbour, in dealing with traffic management. But there doesn't seem to be any importance on the traffic management. What is the National Works Agency doing towards that? Because these are major projects on major thoroughfares.
Okay. Let me first of all say anything that one does, one should always seek for improvement. So there's no gainsaying the fact that we ought to have a better traffic management that will translate into greater comfort to the traveling public. Well, having said that, let us remember that we're talking about these areas being construction zone. Therefore, one has to moderate one's expectation. You cannot traverse a construction zone with the same degree of comfort and ease as you would a zone that is not a construction zone. In fact, the Prime Minister will make a statement on the matter soon, he has assured me. One of the options that we have or had in terms of these zones, we could have locked them off and tell the public, find alternate road that would give us a pristine construction zone, allow us to work without any issue, and basically avoid a lot of the pushback. We are going to do that at 3 miles. We're going to do that at 3 miles, and people will see the implications of having to sterilize these zones. I have been on a number of these construction sites, and believe me, I see no response of the traveling public to the fact that there are posted speed limits, warning signs to say this is a construction zone, expect delay, leave home an hour earlier.
Meaning that the contractor has not put up construction zone signs?
No.
I am passing through. I can give you my example. Passing through 3 miles coming from Portmore on Sunday.
Yeah, I know of the Sunday thing.
Right?
And
there was
we
not
apologize
one
for
flag
that.
man.
So,
there was the water truck just came from one side of the road and just came right around without any warning.
Okay.
There was nobody directing traffic or anything at all, and it was a similar matter. A similar matter in.
Could I just respond to
in Barbican itself? I don't think I saw one flagman for the whole time that I would pass through there in the early morning or late evening. No, while work is even taking place. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. As you started out by saying, is about improvement of.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
We know how Jamaicans are. And unless you prepare an alternative route and say to them, this is where you need to drive, they're going to drive straight down Constant Spring Road.
Yeah.
Right?
And we know
so
that.
the only thing I'm asking of the NWA, it is how best to improve what you have now, so that it is not that greater hindrance to the traveling public and the team that is also working to improve the roadway.
And we are at one on that. In fact, you mentioned Sunday, and I was able to pick up on that instinctively because, I got notice of the issue. It was East Avenue. We're trying to, that's one of the alternate roads, and we're trying to prepare that really, really quickly. And what we have done, we have mapped out the alternate roads for Hagley Park, and we are spending some $2.3 million to prepare the alternate routes. I mean, that is now ongoing. On Boulevard, we will be putting in an additional lane from the bridge up to Duane Park.
So where the bus lane is now an additional.
We're going to convert the bus lane and so on. So we we're getting better. We've learned some tough lessons from the ones that we have done previously, and we are incorporating those lessons in the ones that we're doing going forward. But as I said before, yes, we can always improve on what we do. But we're just asking for a little moderated expectation in terms of the ease of commute, you know.
Public education will always help. Continuous public education, not just before you start the project and then announcing the completion of it, but right through, especially when you're going to be putting in those alternate routes, in just continuous public education.
You know, the final point I'll make on that, to a certain extent, I think there was a certain disbelief on the general public that we really were going to do these projects. I mean, I got a lot of feedback that says, oh, you know, government's been talking about doing these things for years. You know, it's just another thing. People didn't really take us serious until the backhoes were on site. And then, you know, they started responding.
Well, you confused me too, because at some point you say when you were an engineer, and then you said, I am speaking as an engineer. So.
All right, you want to just,
do you presently have an issue with the quality of the work being done by your contractors? Because I noticed that there, in several areas, for one, I noticed this morning on Worthington Avenue, there's a point there which has collapsed. The Constant Spring Road has collapsed, and a number of areas around the city where I noticed that there's been a collapse of the roadway. Is there a problem with work which is being done by these persons who are doing, I don't know if it is pipe work or whatever it is, in the areas where it has collapsed?
Okay, so the collapse that you see on Worthington, which I've seen on Carlin and so on, and on Constant Spring Road, those collapses happen because, again, just normal science. There's a leak, and that leak washes away the base, and then eventually it manifests itself on the surface. The leak would have been there like for a long time, but you wouldn't see a manifestation of that until the collapse happens. Again, I'm not proffering excuse, I mean, for the NWC, they'll defend themselves. I have no reason to defend. But it's not unusual, you know, for, you know, these things to happen in you know, metropolitan areas where infrastructure has been there for many, many years. One could argue that perhaps it occurs too frequently on certain corridors. For example, that Worthington corridor speaks to some kind of deficient, some deficient construction in the first instance. What we're doing, whenever those things happen, we utilize different material. The original bedding material would have been of a certain type or whatever. We're just using river shingles now to, you know, once this thing happens, we just excavate the whole trench and we do the repair. But yes, it is something that we are aware of, and we're working very closely with the NWC. In fact, we have come up with an enhanced cooperation with the NWC. You know, on the Mid-P program, for example, and as Chairman will testify, people have always said that, why doesn't the NW and the NWC cooperate more? And I've often said that translates into the two enterprises having money to spend simultaneously. On the Mid-P program, the NWC is spending $42 million US to coordinate with us. That's what it means. So on all the major corridors, on Constant Spring, we're putting in sewers for the NWC and new water main. On Hagley Park, we'll be putting in sewers and new water main. In the chairman's constituency, what's the name of that town we went to on Friday? In Grange Hill, we're doing, there's a Mid-P program, and it was halted so we can put in the required water infrastructure. So yes, there is tangible evidence of cooperation. Can it be better? Of course it can, but it's something that we will work on.
Let me go back to something that you spoke to earlier. In the areas where it is not the NWC that has really caused the issue, and it's another private contractor. How do you deal with it if it occurs within, say, a period of 2 years after the work has been done? Is there insurance? Do you have insurance in place to manage such risks? Because you can't budget for such occurrences. I don't know how it is handled.
Again, Member Campbell, it all depends. The answer is it all depends. If it's a structured contract in excess of certain value, the contract document specifies the obligations of the contractor and it specifies the remedy to the owner, but it's all time barred. I mean, it has to be within a certain time. So take, the Hagley Park Road project, for example. The contractor would be required to maintain that infrastructure for a specified period. Say, generally, it's about a year. Rarely does it go beyond a year. And we would retain some of his money, and those funds would be used to carry out any remedial works which are required within that time period, or the contractor would do it himself. After the maintenance period has expired, the risk then moves from the contractor to the owner. I mean, and that's how it happens everywhere. For small works, for patching here, patching there, the temporary works, you're not going to get any contractor owning a liability beyond that time.
Which takes me to the point I want to get to. The works which are done on Marcus Garvey Drive, there was significant flooding, because I looked at the plan of the area, and there was absolutely no flooding within somewhere in the region of like 60 years. And under your auspices, the works were carried out, and in what the reports I saw suggested that there was this, because of how the work was carried out, the berms were placed along the path of the water, and caused to a state entity, we suffered somewhere in the region of $400 million in loss. Okay. How do you deal with such a situation?
Well, first of all, Member Campbell, I just want to be assured that that question does not have its genesis in you being counsel for any of the aggrieved parties. Otherwise, I would be compelled to remain silent. Yeah.
What I saw concerns me, because here's that you have a contractor, and I
understand.
Not into naming.
Okay, so I can answer the question now. Now that I'm assured. Now that I'm assured. Yeah. If you recall, yes, there was a flooding incident during the construction. It was during the construction. And again, I visited the site in the company of quite a few other persons. And the consensus based on all the reports and the pictures or whatever was that significant solid waste in terms of garbage was the main contributor to the flooding. In fact, at the end of the construction, now that Marcus Garvey is open, there was a significant rain event that occurred. And I also visited, I think I was there with Minister Mackenzie, and we looked around and said, see, this is what happens when you have good infrastructure and there's rain, there's no impact. So there's not been any impact on those properties consequent to the works being completed. Yes, there was an incident during the construction phase. And in terms of remedy, that's why all these sites have insurance, and the aggrieved parties are within their right to make a claim. But as you would know, all claims have to be adjudicated, and a decision will be made on the evidence. But as far as the NWA is concerned, it is our position that based on what we have seen, what we have observed, measured, or whatever, it was not the works that caused the flooding, but collateral issues like garbage blocking up the channels and so on. So that's our position.
Let us move on from there in terms, because this is going to impact us significantly, how much the allocations we make in going forward. You have these you have the one on Constant Spring Road, you have the ones coming through Barbican, and they're all coming south. And with what is happening in the hills, and are you part of the planning process, which determines, how much, where we put, because I see a number of advocates saying we should increase the number of units we put on these lots, and as you've said earlier, that with the runoff from these built areas, it's going to be significant. So where do you fit into this matrix? Because I am concerned that with this flow from the north to the south, we're going to have significant damage to those of us who live down here.
Member Campbell, I made an observation, I think about 2 weeks ago, that members of parliament, esteemed members of parliament, participate in the budgetary process, and you vote in terms of the appropriations bill, you vote how much money I have at my disposal to clean drains for the year. And if you refer to the approved budget, I think my allocation for drain cleaning for the whole country for the whole year is in the range of about $54 million, which you have given me. 82. I'm sorry, 82. 82. So, I made the observation that, I've not heard too many MPs lobbying for that $82 million to be. Okay, I withdraw. Give me $82 million to clean all the drains for the entire country for the whole year. That is the limit of my capacity. Now, yes, we are part and parcel of the government's planning apparatus vis-a-vis, bigger development. And I am an advocate for increased density. I think that is the way to go. We're not creating any more land, and so we have to use what's called the airspace. Integrated development, meaning commercial and domestic together, and so on and so forth. But for that to work and work efficiently, the support infrastructure must be there. The drainage has to be there, the sewage has to be there, the water supply has to be there, and the telecoms has to be there. Now, the projects we are now doing, Constant Spring, Hagley Park, Mandela, most people see it as a road project. But the truth is, the road component is really relatively simple. It is the subterranean infrastructure that is really complex and really important to development, because the drains are put in, the sewers are put in, the water main is put in, the telecoms will come and have to put in their cables and splice their thing and so on, and all of that has to be done and completed before you see the asphalt work, which is what the public identifies to be progress. Yeah. So to the extent that these developments are accompanied by the requisite infrastructure, although you don't see it, I have no issue with the development moving, at a certain pace. But you're right, unless the collateral infrastructure is in place, then, the things won't function as efficiently as they should.
In all of this, you're saying that Soapbury is likely to function at a higher level than it is presently, and so that we can hope that our natural harbor down here will benefit from not having that level of.
Okay, so in terms of Soapbury, from what I have read, Soapbury is built with what we call an installed capacity, and again in engineering parlance, once you approach the installed capacity, the sensible thing to do is to increase the capacity. And I do know that the government, many years ago, did earmark a significant portion of land in that area for eventual expansion of Soapbury. from what I've read, I know that the NWC has crafted their plan for Soapberry Phase 2, which should be online. But I also know that that area has been identified as a prime location for stormwater management facilities. So there has to be, that has to be worked out in terms of the optimization of the use of those lands. And I'm part of a team that has been looking at it, because the Kimanas Enterprise, Kimanas Development, Kimanas Economic Zone, that has some implications for what is going to happen with Soapberry and so on. But there's a team of persons who are working on that, and yeah.
Very, very heartened to hear you say that, because I was concerned with us having, because I heard a number of announcements being made about the special economic zone, and I wasn't certain that all that this was, you know, behind the scene work was going on.
No, we're part of that as well. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, you just yes.
It's a question, Chairman. Back to the disaster mitigation program that is to come. You mentioned earlier about a master plan, right? So my question is, when this program is to come into effect, will you be using the master plan per se, or you'll be consulting with the Member of Parliament for the various different areas? And why I ask that is because there's an area not to be called Cane Lane that due to the construction on that north-south road, persons have never before seen so much flood in that area. Once there's a heavy rain, there's an earthen drain in the back, and that drain, when I was a boy, was about 8 feet deep. Now it's about a foot deep. So you can imagine everything that comes just flood out that entire area. So I'd like to ask the procedure that is going to be taking place at that time.
Okay, Dr. Dunn, I'm happy to say that the PIOJ has recently written to us informing us that the adaptation fund, the UN adaptation fund, has agreed to a new program with Jamaica in terms of disaster mitigation. And one of the projects that we had submitted, presumably on your behalf, was the Anato Bay project. And the prescription for the disaster mitigation for the Anato Bay area comes from the master drainage study. Now, once we are in a position to projectize this initiative, then we will have the local dialogue. But what we're doing now is trying to make sure that the funding is in place, and the indication the funding is on its way. And then we will get into the details of the design and the consultation and the public meetings and so on and so forth. So you are fortunate in that regard.
Chairman, although I think that has to do a lot with the seawall side, but referring to the inner portion of land called Cane Lane, which is a little, I think, different from that particular project.
So usually how we do these things, we look at the impact area and we look at the contributing area. So, you know, we will have a comprehensive look at it.
Mr. Hunter, just in closing, I listened, but I want to sort of make a sort of a personal input to really see how the response is going to be. One of the challenges, as you may know, as you do know, over the last 2.5, 3 weeks, there has been extensive flooding in my constituency of Western Westmoreland. It is largely in the Little London area, although other areas, Peggy Barry, parts of Friendship Division, have had, and some other areas. But there are some specific areas that have been affected more than others. Among those areas, and Little London is a low-lying area, but amongst those are the Bay Road, McNeil Land, Sinclair City, Mango Hall, Broughton, etc., etc. The difficulty we have is that we've had flooding there before, but over the last few weeks we've had extensive rain. And there's a network of drains in the area. Now, we've done drain cleaning, but it seems that something has gone wrong in this period of time. And what is happening now is with the flooding, we have an emergency period now. We're cutting some outlets. The SOOP of the NWA and Parish Council have both been out there with us. We're cutting outlets, trying to get the water to run off, and then doing all the other issues, health, prevention, measures, trying to help those who have been affected, etc. But the real problem is, one, that once the water runs off, you have extensive damage to the drain network, because having been flooded, they now fill up and there's a real problem. And two, the roads, even the main road, Little London, Savlamar, and other parts have now been affected because just over the few weeks of problems, you can just see where it's pulling up. Now the SOOP comes on the road with us, and we've put some funds in, we have some emergency work, water is running off. The danger to this is that in a week or two, God, with luck, we will, it will get dry. And then you'll say, okay, when it's dry, you don't really see a problem, till the next time you have heavy rain. Now the reality is now, that as a member of parliament, I need to once the water runs off, we need to look at these drains. We need to ensure that the drains are properly cleaned. There are some main drains, the Margaret Gutter and others, but this is extensive work. And above McNeil Land, there's a dike, and we feel that the dike has been compromised, and that's why a major part of the flooding took place. Now, the SOOP that's there is very good and has been working with us on it. But something like this, one would think that the NWA would send a specialized team in to these areas that are being flooded, where you really have serious problems, that would make a recommendation that at the end of this, and it has to be done over a period of time, that there would be a recommendation to us as members of parliament as to what really needs to be done. And then the third process, of course, of how funding is going to be put in place. And I say this simply because if 2, 3, 4 weeks from now, a month from now, 2 months, 3 months, there's a heavy rain, hurricane season, and these areas flood out again, they're not calling NWAR, they're calling the members of parliament. And the reality is that we need two things urgently, and well, urgently in my case, but perpetually for all of us, is good technical advice, and two, where we have these real issues, we need the support with funding to ensure they don't happen again. And so I think that I certainly would like to put Westmoreland and my constituents with what has happened recently as a case study. Yeah. And I was asked on a number of programs yesterday, what is the cost? Yeah. I indicated I can't give a cost at this point because I have to get it from you, okay, the NWA, but we have not been formally engaged. And I think what I'm getting from my colleagues is what is the mechanism and when is this formal engagement, okay, because all of us have areas that have similar problems, and you may know them, but there must be some special attention paid to these areas.
Let me respond quickly, Chairman. I read your appeal to a number of institutions in the paper, and I was very hurt that you're appealing to the parish council, you're appealing to who else were you appealing to? Council, you're appealing to Minister of Local Government, and you never appealed to us for help.
No.
I read it in the papers,
Mr. Hunter, no.
and I felt
with due
very
respect,
hurt. Notwithstanding.
I know you may say that in jest, but on Saturday I spoke to the minister with responsibility myself, and on the tour. On the tour, the soup was with us for a portion of it, and I suspected that the report might have reached you at some point.
Notwithstanding, past hurts.
But I'm happy.
But
I'm happy for your interest, and certainly next time,
I give
members, he'll be first on my list. I know who to call. Yes,
I give you the assurance that the matter did come to our attention, albeit belatedly, but. Yes, a technical team is being organized. Next week, early next week, the technical team with our, hydraulic engineers and so on will go down and examine the issues, and they will produce a report prescribing the technical solution with costing and some timelines for implementation. And I would imagine we should have that by in another 2 weeks or so, at which stage we will share with you and our portfolio ministry, and then we can move into implementation. So yes, we have it down.
Yeah, well, I truly appreciate that. What I would like, tomorrow I'm going into one of the areas to have a consultation with some of the community members because of the extensive flooding and protracted flooding. And some work is going on there already, emergency work. But what I would like is if we could get notice when the technical team is coming, that I can ensure that I'm available along with the other representatives, that we can ensure that all the areas are looked at. And then what comes back, because often what happens to us is that we get technical advice. And having gotten technical advice, you might find persons on the ground say, no, the real problem is that, or this, or the calvert low, or everybody is a practicing engineer rather than retired. But the fact of the matter is that you need to have this input, because the real issue that we have, again, is one of credibility. I would say if you have a problem with your appendix, well, you can come to me. But certainly... I
know you as a politician.
Well, there you go. I could say the same of you. However, the point is this, that the one is credibility, and when we go and take the advice and you say to us X, Y, Z, we also have to have that consultation, because having taken advice and the work being done, if there's another flood, again, I reiterate what I said at the start. It is not the engineer or the NWA, it is the Member of Parliament. So there needs to be a proper consultative process that includes us, so that discussion and going forward. So I will make myself available for that. But I think that these are issues, and I was interested in what Dr. Dunn said, Member Dunn, because the reality is that in each constituency there are 1 or 2 areas that do perpetually have problems, and we're going to have to put the necessary resources in place to mitigate against it as much as possible. Because when it rains heavily, some areas, or whatever measures are going to be taken. So I think certainly in this case we have done it before, but I am even more so now going to ensure that every single thing that can be done is done. And for that, we are going to need all the assistance, and I'm happy that you're sending down a specific team for us to deal with this matter.
You have our support.
Not to belabor the point, I know time is going, but I'd like to say as a young member of Parliament, I think I've gotten quite a bit of support from NWA and our parish manager, Mr. Clayton in particular. I mean, once you call, they respond and they come. I mean, the challenge is to action some of these items. And I want to concur with our chairman in terms of what locally happens on the ground versus a technical report from individuals. I mean, and we value technical expertise. But take, for instance, there's a mid-P project that's going on now in my area. And I went on tour the area yesterday and realized that there's constant water coming out from somewhere, but they're building the V-drain on the opposite side. And the local person was saying, but that just doesn't make any sense because the hill is coming onto the road, and they're saying possibly that a U-drain should be there rather than a V-drain across the road based on just the general flow regularly of the water from that area. They're saying that they can guarantee that in a short order, once the road is repaired, it's gonna go again. But the point I want to also mention is that there are areas, take for instance and maybe you're aware of this place called New Road in Enfield. I mean, we had an event there that has never happened in more than 100 years, where there's a drain, small enough, but I don't know what took place in the hills, but when we had a major raid in, I think in November, December, right, everything came down and literally washed away our house. And that lady has been on my case almost every day about her house because it sits right there. The drain is full, and I'm not sure what is happening to that. I know Mr. Clayton and the parish team has come out there. So I said I don't want to personalize the conversation a lot, but these are some of the real things that are happening on the ground, and how do we take care of them?
Yeah, I think.
I take note of your concerns, Dr. Dunn, and we will see how best we can mitigate the issues. But I give the general assurance that in all that we're doing, in all the prescriptions that we're going to come up with, we will have a big dialogue. Yeah.
All right. On that note, members, I want to thank the representatives from the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, and specifically the NAA for the participation today. I think it's been very informative. With that, members, we are going to adjourn. Next meeting will be in 2 weeks, the 30th, when we have a number of, I think, smaller tidying up things. We'll be doing the national security in camera and out camera meeting. We will be seeing with the Ministry of Tourism and the questions asked last week about the consultants, advisors. So we'll do those, and then the following week I think we're going to be doing the issue of education. We're doing now one ministry, or is it Ministry of Youth? We were going to do the Ministry of Youth the following week. So that, members, meeting adjourned. Thank you. Because members, I haven't had a chance to really go through them, but I think it's really just a big one that I went to.
Once you replace negative thoughts with positive ones, you'll start having positive results. Educate yourself.
Now that you're speaking